all, welcome. I'm Colleen Ryan. I'm the Consulting Executive Director for the New York State CDFI Coalition. And for more than 2 decades, this nonprofit association has been the organizer and catalyst for important initiatives that help CDFIs and the communities they serve. The 2020 CDFI Friday series of webinars and panel discussions was supposed to be our 11th annual statewide conference with the theme New York State CDFIs Collaborating for Impact. But even though we can't gather in person, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today. Allow me to take a moment to thank the Board of Directors of the New York State CDFI Coalition, a true working board. I really thank them for their support. I'd also like to thank our sponsors for their understanding as we made the move from traditional to virtual conference. We are grateful to JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, M&T Bank, Amalgamated Bank, Capital One, B&B, Citizens Bank, Community Preservation Corporation, Hanover Bank, Ponce Bank, TD Bank, Valley, and Woodforest National Bank for their support. So today, and on one more Friday next month, we'll gather online with supporters from around the state to share ideas, learn about the latest lending and program innovations, and enjoy the company of people with a shared passion. We have a couple of options for Q&A at the end of the panel. You can either use the chat feature that's built into Zoom, or if it's easier for you, just send your question to info@nyscdfi.org. Please feel free to send questions throughout the presentation, and I'll do my best to get to as many as I can. If you're not already a member, please consider joining your colleagues from around the state and help the coalition develop its agenda for 2021. With a track record of some 4 decades of providing capital to low-income communities, New York State CDFIs have a legacy of success to draw upon. And as the need for our services becomes more evident than ever, we're looking forward to working with you to keep up with the expectations of our clients and the needs of the underserved. We are so delighted to welcome our panelists to discuss creating community wealth through community-controlled investment today. Todd and David Kraft are staff attorneys with the Community Economic Development Clinic, part of the Justice Center at Albany Law School. Founded in 2016, the Community Economic Development Clinic gives law students the opportunity to build business and spur economic development in underserved communities. They are a legal resource for individuals and grassroots groups in low-income neighborhoods, as well as for new immigrants who might not know how to plug into pro bono services. They provide representation for people interested in forming a new nonprofit or small business, and they support people when they advocate for economic development in their neighborhood. So with that, I will turn it over to Todd and David, and I will turn off my video, and I'll come back at the end to handle questions. Take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Colleen. I'll just start us off, just a couple seconds of technical stuff as I share the screen to set things up. So bear with anything. All right, I think that should be good. Let us know if that's not correct. But yes, I just want I'll start just to introduce myself briefly. Todd, he, him, and all of the accolades and bylines that Colleen just said. We have a great presentation set up for you all today, which David is going to start us off with. David, I'll turn it over to you and you just tell me when. Next slide.
Sure, thank you, Todd. So yeah, hi everyone, my name is David Kraft, and thank you, Colleen, for giving us the opportunity to speak with the attendees today and to kind of to bring up this topic of community-controlled investment and creating opportunities for community wealth. So Todd, if you would like to go to kind of the first slide. So really the main focus of this discussion is talking about how we can maybe create a shift on who decides where capital goes when it comes to community investment. So Todd, if you can go to the next slide, please. So this chart, which got from the National Conference on Community Capital, it's an association of individuals looking at ways to create more community-controlled capital opportunities. Created this great graph, and I think it's kind of symptomatic of what we talk about when we think about who decides where capital goes, right? So when you look at the top half of the graph, those capital sources, right there, like big banks, national foundations, venture capital, angel investors, they come from external sources, and they're generally there's other people who are making decisions of where where the capital goes. When I say where the capital goes, meaning like what types of businesses get access to loans, what types of projects get access to equity capital and things of that nature, right? So the idea is, if you look at the left of the screen, you're going to see that's really where other people decide versus the right. And I think really the bottom right-hand corner, the investment crowdfunding, is where it gives is the current model where you see it gives the individuals the direct right to choose where their capital goes, how to invest their money, whether it's, and so with this model, I think one of some of the drawbacks that might hinder people from the communities that we serve in is maybe when it comes to the necessary capital levels you need to have in order to participate in investment crowdfunding, or the fact that there might be a lack of a local presence, where maybe there aren't many like local businesses or projects that are seeking investment crowdfunding, just because the implications of having to navigate the legal barriers in order to be certified to do regulation crowdfunding, maybe that a lot of times can hinder local businesses from seeking out investment crowdfunding within their communities. So really what we were looking at are ways, how can we create a vehicle that could do two things? That one, it could allow an individual, regardless of their economic status, to be able to participate within investment within their community. So investing into businesses, investing into real estate projects and things of that nature. And more importantly too, but giving them the voice, giving them the ability to say, hey, here's what we have decided when it comes to the priorities within our community, and what we think needs, what we see as important when it comes to the investment needs of our community. And we want to, utilize not only our own capital, but our voice to leverage that. So really what's come about as a result of that is seeing what other models are popping up around the country. So Todd, if you would like to go to the next slide. So one of the models we learned about recently was the Boston Ujima Project out of Boston, Massachusetts. And it was kind of unique. It's kind of essentially what they're doing is really emblematic of what we think could be a great vehicle that can achieve both of these missions. Again, giving people, regardless of their economic means, and ability to participate within the investment within their community, but also giving them the voice so that they actually do have a vehicle where they can exercise their voice as to how they want to see investment capital flow. So I'm just going to play, even though this video is 3 minutes, just going to probably play the first minute and a half where this explains what Boston Ujima is. So just make sure that your audio is shared. So that, yeah.
Could you hear that?
Yeah, I could hear the beginning. Yeah.
Has been working for us for some time. Boston Ujima Project is imagining something better. We are creating a community-controlled local economy led by Boston's working-class residents of color. How? A multi-stakeholder group comprised of community members, small business owners, workers, grassroots activists, impact investors, members of unions, faith and civic organizations, and hopefully you, will come together to form Boston Ujima Project's governing body. And we'll pool our resources in a community-controlled capital fund.
Todd, are you able to raise the volume a little bit?
No matter how much.
Is that it?
Yeah, can you raise, is it possible to raise the volume maybe on your computer?
I think that's it. That's what I got on in terms of volume. Oh.
Our resources in a will receive one vote, no matter how much we invested, on decisions like which businesses and real estate initiatives we will invest in, and what community-centered business practices we would like them to uphold, like paying a living wage. We will do this at neighborhood assemblies, where we prioritize what's important for our specific neighborhoods, and at a citywide assembly, where we prioritize what's important for the city of Boston as a whole. Our Good Business Alliance will support businesses who receive funding from us with creative organizing and by providing technical assistance, cooperative purchasing, and other joint ventures to strengthen operations and market share. Our Good Business Certification and Directory will highlight their healthy business practices to gain customer support.
So yeah, you could pause it from there. That's good enough. Yeah, so the rest of the video goes into additional aspects that Boston Ujima is trying to serve. But essentially, as it's stated, right, again, the idea behind creating this vehicle is to allow the community itself, the residents, the small business owners, the workers, and all to really be able to have a vehicle that would allow them to exercise their voice as to how they want to see, capital flow within their community, the types of businesses they want to see receive the capital, the types of the priorities when it comes to what they want to see receive investment or loans or access to loans. And as you can see, so they kind of see an example of what they did. The community groups came together and they created what are the standards that they want to see businesses and projects that receive capital from Boston Ujima exhibit, right? So you have everything from, worker ownership, community ownership, ensuring that there's living wage paying jobs and things of that nature. And then the other side on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the priorities that they've established, essentially saying if we're going to put capital into anything, we need to make sure they address these priorities that we have already identified as a community. And if it's outside of that, not to say that we won't invest in that, but there has to be some form of, there has to be a reason that's very compelling as to why we would, invest in such project if it's not fitting one of these 14 needs and priorities that we've established. And there's other examples happening across on other parts of the country as well. Todd, if you'd like to go to the next slide, probably not going to play the video, but the East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative, familiar with that. Again, it's another idea of giving control to people in the community, right? So the idea is there's this fund that was created, cooperatively controlled fund, with the idea that people put their money into it, residents can put their money into it, renters participate in it, and other folks, and they collectively decide in terms of being able to invest in real estate within the community, but for the purpose of maintaining affordability. So as a cooperative, everyone gets to decide the rent levels that are charged to the renters, the terms of the agreement, and things of that nature, right? So again, it's about giving control, giving more voice and empowerment to people within the communities that are essentially most affected by investment, whether it's business investment or real estate investment. So from seeing these models in other parts of the country, we really, myself and Todd, we really started thinking about what would it be like for here in the capital region if we tried to do something like this. So we really started, so what ended up happening is we started engaging in discussions with people around the community. And Todd, if you want to go to the next slide. So we created a discussion series called By the Block. Again, the idea was a discussion on talking with the community. What would it be like? What would be their thoughts when it comes to if there's a way we could create a vehicle that would allow people within their community to not only be able to invest their capital, but to have a say in where that capital goes and what types of businesses and projects, what would people's thoughts about that? What would be their thoughts and concerns about such issues? So the way we presented the By the Block, Todd, if you could go to the next slide, we presented it as as a vehicle for community investment on a cooperative level, right? So taking the concepts and the underlying concepts of cooperative type organizations, understanding democratic control, one member, one vote. So regardless of how much you invest, whether you invest $10 or you invest $1,000, you each have the same amount of vote, giving opportunities for everyone, not just wealthy individuals, to be able to invest, and also building community wealth, right? So creating a vehicle to where residents who want to participate, they can share not only in the economic, but also the social returns that are generated from value-producing community assets. So a lot of the series was about engaging people in this conversation about what it would mean to have a community investment cooperative and how it would work. Todd, if you'd like to go to the next slide. We actually had community folks go through exercises. We would, for example, we created a poster board. We would give them like little sticky notes representing dollar values, and we would ask them to, decide, like, okay, if you had an opportunity, if these 4 projects came before you and there was an opportunity for you to choose where you would want to put your money or how much of it, like, what would it be, right? And so it kind of let people see what their values were at the time or what they consider most important. And so you know, it was kind of interesting to see the themes, like the common themes that came up. Again, we did these forum series throughout different neighborhoods throughout the Capital District. So it wasn't just one neighborhood. We went to different parts of Albany and Schenectady and Troy to do these types of, to do these forums. And it was great. It was interesting to see the kind of the common themes that came up throughout the conversation. So Todd, if you want to go to the next slide. First theme that kept coming up was supply does not meet demand in their community, right? So throughout the forum series, the participants expressed that what the business amenities that currently exist with the community do not meet their demands, right? They have to, residents find that they have to consistently go outside of their communities to buy, you know, and get access to the types of amenities that they seek for their communities, whether that's gym, healthy lifestyle options, affordable grocery, affordable restaurants. So it's kind of saying, okay, if there's a clear demand for these types of amenities in their communities, you know, why aren't we seeing more opportunities for investment capital to go into these types of opportunities, helping with maybe spurring the growth of affordable grocery options or restaurants or exercise and exercise centers and things of that nature, right? As a matter of fact, if anything, what you see is the opposite. You're like, for example, in the city of Albany, in the South End, last year alone, they saw multiple businesses close and leave the neighborhoods, right? So a Rite Aid left the neighborhood. It was Stewart's, which was just a convenience store. Stewart's closed and left the community, right? So you're consistently seeing the exodus of these types of businesses, even though there's still a demand for them in the community. And it's like, again, it's like, why aren't we creating opportunities for the capital to go towards meeting these demands? I'm ensuring that the people that are receiving these capital, this lending capital or equity capital, are playing their part to ensure that they continue to meet the demands of the community. And then the next slide gets into the theme about, again, things matter more than profits to people in the community, right? So again, even though we told people, hey, we gave, through the hypotheticals, we gave people the opportunity to make a decision as to what would they want to see investment in, and we would give them examples of like what would be the returns on their investment. For example, if they invested in a housing project, in an affordable housing project versus maybe a restaurant or something of that nature, what would be their returns? And maybe one would be higher than the other. You know, to people in the community that, you know, from their standpoint, they're like, look, other things matter more to us than just profit. Even though, yes, would like to see a profit, we wouldn't want to make sure that the projects are successful, but we're not prioritizing just simply profit, right? We want to make sure that there's other things that this project is going to provide that's going to benefit the community as a whole. That, you know, is a project owner practicing good labor standards? Are they hiring locally, right? So a lot of times people think, oh, just because there's a project coming into an economically distressed community, that people in the community should be happy. But a lot of common theme that I consistently hear every time is like, okay, well, who's going to get access to the jobs? Because if we're not going to get access to the jobs, yeah, that's great that, you know, that you're going to build a nice mixed-use project, but we're not benefiting from it economically. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just going to be able to see something that's nice and shiny, but we're never going to be able to actually afford to live in there or be able to shop there because we're not getting access. We're not sharing in the economic returns, right? Or other things, you know, how is this benefiting the community? Is there space being provided to the community? So these are the types of things that we were seeing come up consistently during the By the Block forum series. So we've kind of gathered that information and understanding it. And again, at this point in time, we're still trying to figure out what would be a way to kind of pilot a community investment cooperative, right? Because again, people were excited in the idea of like, yes, if we can create a vehicle that would allow me to put my capital, you know, invest my capital into the community and give me the ability to have a say in where that capital goes, I would be excited about it. But again, there's obviously questions about, you know, who would manage this vehicle and what insurances are there to mitigate the risk involved. So we're still trying to figure out ways to pilot this kind of idea of a community investment cooperative. But at some point we thought about, okay, how can maybe potentially CDFIs play a role? Because it's not to say that there aren't vehicles that exist within communities that invest within the communities. There are CDFIs, but we wondered, okay, can there be a role for CDFIs to play alongside of community investment cooperatives? And that's kind of what Todd is going to go over in his part. So,
thank you, David. Yeah, exactly. That's where you all come in. No, just kidding. But no, that's precisely right. I just want to take a couple slides to talk about how you all in the audience can fit in here, what role you all can play, and I'm sure you all have ideas as well. And we'd love to have at the end of this, as part of the Q&A, if people want to share in the chat their ideas, responding to some of the things we raise here, because as the industry practitioners, we very much look to you to tell us what what we don't know about the structural and other barriers that you face, and how those play into this. First, I just want to start by celebrating the CDFI industry and the critical role it has played in stabilizing communities in the past few decades. This, of course, speaks to the role that CDFIs have played as a crucial source of financing in many communities, as a provider or partner in financial literacy trainings, and as a source of counseling and business ownership preparedness. At the same time, the reason why we're talking about emerging models is because I think everyone here understands that, the industry, the raison d'etre in many ways is to continue to shift and to change to meet ongoing and new challenges communities facing the communities and markets that they serve. One way of getting at this, one aspect of this that I want to highlight actually brings us back to the definition of CDFIs that was in the act that created the CDFI fund. So if we go back to the 94 Act, at the top there, you'll see the different prongs, and I highlighted and bolded, or I bolded and italicized one of the 5 prongs that really speaks to the role of local accountability of CDFIs and sort of gets to a lot of these concepts of community control. So you see, it was very much right there in the original conception, or at least the conception when it was formalized through the CDFI fund. And sort of, you can see that a CDFI movement, or the community reinvestment movement that brought the CDFI legislation to be passed, was really drawing on existing concepts, for example, in the credit union context of depositor control of the institution, and thinking through what that might mean for loan funds or non-depository institutions. The next on the list is, Cliff Rosenthal, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, was one of the key figures in that push in 94 to get the federal fund set up. He recently said this year in an interview in Shelter Force that CDFIs have only moved us halfway towards financial democracy. They have indeed broadened access to capital for poor and financially excluded communities, but they have not, with certain critical exceptions that I personally also want to highlight and hold. They have not, with certain exceptions, transferred control over capital to those communities. And the last bullet point gets to the idea of what has happened with board and advisory roles, and as I'm sure we're all familiar with, there oftentimes those are crowded out or remained rationed to technical and capital partners of CDFIs rather than community partners, or maybe not treated on the same level. I want to acknowledge that there's very good business reasons for that, for all of this, and that CDFIs face a myriad of changes. And so again, just wanted to say, your expertise and your perspective on this is incredibly welcomed, and we look forward to hearing your comments as to these issues. But the purpose of this presentation is not to dwell on this generalized historical facts so much as to point out to a way that the CDFI industry, including bank partners, can achieve both this original intent as codified in federal law, as well as earn community reinvestment, or CRA credits colloquially. I know there's no credits, but CRE credits colloquially through this emerging model that David introduced a moment ago. So just wanted to start by talking about what CDFIs specifically, especially New York State CDFIs, can do. And one of the things that we wanted to highlight here is that, or about a few things we wanted to highlight here is that, CDFIs are already, you may already be doing this for, and where in your local environment. And if you are, please let us know. We'd love to hear more about that. But, and we've had conversations with some of our local CDFIs who are, some of these ideas actually came from them. And so, and you may have other ideas as well, but some of the specific ways that we've managed to think up is, CDFIs as fiscal agents, as sort of doing the back end bookkeeping and administrative, which goes to the core critical values of CDFIs as financial products and services providers, as well as potential incubators of these types of funds, which is sort of a related function. Those seem the most obvious to us. But then we're also thinking, like, of course, obviously, CDFIs could be members of lending syndicates, either within a community controlled fund, providing core capital to the fund, or alongside community controlled funds as an additional layer in the capital stack for the recipients that have been chosen by the community controlled fund, and but having a separate set of terms from the ones that the community controlled fund itself might have. CDFIs as purchasing loan participations and other forms of liquidity support to help clean up the balance sheet, free up the balance sheet, and take successful loans off the balance sheet of these funds so that they could more quickly reinvest in their local communities or reloan in their local communities. And probably the most obvious second to some of these other ones is just as a marketing agent, using the fact that you do have bank partners, that you know how to speak to these institutions in a way that perhaps folks from the community are not as experienced with, or at least at the same frequency, to help solicit additional funds from those partnerships. And on that point, just wanted to very quickly sort of speak to how those conversations, we know that more about how those conversations go than we do, but just to highlight some of the ways in which banks that this fits within the existing infrastructure of the Community Reinvestment Act and the CRA, and should not be viewed as some sort of, there's clearly technical challenges to implementing this model that require a lot of experimentation, and we can and we'd love to hear your thoughts about it as well. But at least in terms of sort of legal and compliance issues, this is not some out of this otherworldly Brave New World sort of thing, that it's in many ways fits within the existing frameworks that everyone is used to. The most obvious is the investment test under the CRA, where a bank can get by doing qualifying equity investment in a CDFI, who then partners with a community controlled loan fund in this way, or investment fund in this way, that can obviously satisfy that test. And a couple of the interesting things that I wanted to highlight was, if you look to the interagency questions, they talk about not just CDFIs, but also SBICs and community development venture capital companies, and a properly structured community controlled loan fund. That could be a way for a bank to invest directly in that if it qualifies for recognition of one of these, one of these two categories. I just want to state, Mark Morial of the National Urban League, in his closing remarks at the National CDFI conference that ended just this week as well, he spoke of the need to reimagine SBICs, and just suggest that here is one of the ways that a reimagination of these these federally defined or federally recognized concepts could be experimentation here could be critical to support for small businesses, especially minority owned, and so revitalizing an experimentation here could be critical. Quickly, as I'm sure you all know, but obviously the lending test could be another way to, especially for revolving loan funds that are community controlled. Obviously, you can make a back-to-back debt or equity investment in a CDFI who participates or makes available these community development loans through one of these funds, and obviously the proration rules might make you sort of juice up the amount of CRA credits that you're able to receive if you choose the lending test over the investment test. And just finally, performance ratings, the way the regs work is they provide an additional impetus for permanently supporting CDFIs and emerging model funds, since this should show both innovation and flexibility. Flexibility is interpreted to encourage below market rates, as well as non-extractive collection policies. So, engaging with an emerging model is a great way to show innovation, as well as, acceding and agreeing with and underwriting the terms that the community work out, is a great way to show flexibility. So, now that we've briefly discussed the financing channels available to the emerging model and how engagement with it can help you in the audience, just noticing that we're ending a little early. Maybe I was speaking too fast. We can end with some concluding thoughts to bring this all back together, and then move to a discussion. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So David, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So yeah, if you want to go to that slide. So I mean, ultimately, I think what we're trying to get at is the concept of creating more agency and ownership within the community, right? Creating a vehicle that would allow community members to feel connected and feel that they have a sense of ownership in communities. I think that's a common theme through our work, at least with communities, when it comes to how they feel when it comes to the economic development or inclusion with their communities. I feel a lot of times I'm hearing the same, that we don't feel like that we're part of this community, or that we are a part of the change that's going to occur within this community. And I think that's because we don't create a lot of vehicles that would allow a community to really have a sense of ownership and to exercise control within their communities. We do a great job of allowing people to participate and provide their input through planning meetings and other community meetings to just gauge their input and feedback. But when it comes to the ultimate decision-making power, we relinquish that to another entity that might be outside of their community or has no real connection to the community outside of their entity, being put in a position, either being a CDFI or some other philanthropic organization, to where they can exercise influence. So this was taken from Mercy Corps Northwest, which came up with a very innovative model to create community ownership in commercial real estate assets within a working class community out in East Portland. I think they really understood the importance of ownership, and so this was taken from their website. Again, ownership changed lives, right? It builds self-esteem, and it creates a voice for investors as owners of the neighborhood, that when they walk out of their doors, whether they're renting or owning in their community, when they look at certain assets within their community, for example, in this case, with the Community Investment Trust, it's a shopping plaza within their neighborhood, they can look at that and they can say, I own a piece of that. I have a stake in this within my community. And from that, it's not just the economic benefits, but people become more civically engaged within their community. They become more concerned about their community because there's more that in their community that they can see, that they feel a part of, that they actually belong to. So, that's kind of what we're trying to just get at with this whole concept of a community investment cooperative. Can we create a vehicle that would really allow people within the community to, for all people within their community, to be able to participate, not only economically, but also in the social aspects, and being able to exercise their voice as to establishing what are the priorities when it comes to investing in their community, where they want to see investing go, And again, if you create this vehicle, then it gives a little bit more of a standing for other institutions, you know, other CDFIs, philanthropic organizations, banks to be able to follow their lead, right? Because you now have essentially a central place to look at and say, okay, if the community has put their money together and has decided here are the things that they're going to put their, you know, that they're going to invest in, why can't we just follow their lead? And that's really what it comes down to. So that's pretty much it. And again, I think the idea is we really want to hear from folks in the audience. To Todd's point about, yeah, what would prevent CDFIs from engaging in this kind of activities, and maybe if there's already other examples occurring out there, and we would love to learn more about. Feel free to let us know. We'd love to learn and look into it as we look into how we want to pilot something like this within the capital region of New York.
Great.
So thank you all. Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions. I have a few, and if you want to pull down the screen share and go back to our regularly scheduled gallery view. Thank you. I had a couple of questions on the chat. One is, I love the idea of allowing community members to invest and share in the wealth building that's going on. However, all investment carries risk. How do you insulate low-income community members from loss? Because you have all the answers.
David, I think you had some good examples from actually the Mercy Corps one. Yeah,
I think with Mercy Corps Northwest, what they did, and again, this is the idea with Mercy Corps Northwest, is they essentially created a community investment trust, which is a vehicle that would allow people within the community to acquire shares or ownership interest within the shopping plaza. Again, that was one of their main concerns, was how do you protect against risk of loss for low-income individuals. And what they were able to do is they were able to work with a financial institution in the area to essentially provide a letter of credit, right? So the idea was that essentially if for instance, maybe let's say someone left the community because, again, they only restricted people who lived in the community to be able to invest and participate. If you left the community and you wanted to liquidate your shares, the letter of credit would allow you to liquidate against that. But then the other part was also the risk of loss. So that way, if there was, for example, any sort of economic issues that maybe caused the shopping plaza to fail economically, maybe, you know, tenants left, if there was high vacancies, there wasn't as much rental income coming in, the letter of credit ensured the value of the shares that the residents acquired. So that was one idea that was out there. Yeah, so that's an example to think about when it comes to how do you maybe mitigate the risk of loss for community members.
So a little bit more of a nuts and bolts math question. In projects where community ownership is part of the capital stack, do you have a sense of what portion of the total development cost is provided by the community? What's the blend?
So we haven't actually seen a lot of haven't seen a concrete example in the region yet. We've seen some discussions of examples from how this works in other places. And keep in mind, a lot of times the community investment piece is more takeout capital. It's not construction or development capital. It comes in after that and sweeps that out, or as part of the suite of investment that takes that out. Which goes to the risk point as well. But I think from what we've seen, it's usually not the biggest part of the capital stack in any example that I've seen. It really is more about the questions of ownership and the alignment of incentives that David spoke to at the end of the presentation, which also goes to the risk point too. That people if people are both figuratively and metaphorically, figuratively and literally invested in businesses in their community, they're going to have an interest in making sure they patronize them and keep them in business, or if it's housing, keeping it up and supporting it, and
they have skin in the game.
Skin in the game, right? And all of that, and so I think it's more these benefits that we're getting at, rather than this is going to solve the capital problems for developers. We still need traditional financing and reform of how how those markets work and how those channels work to to ensure that it's properly incentivizing quality, responsible new investment.
Well, along those lines, and speaking of developers, because CDFIs are not traditionally developers, would the idea be for them to allow the community to provide some capital alongside the CDFI and then get some returns?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, David, I think you've actually thought a little bit about this in the local context and have been interested in thinking how, this is one piece that where CDFIs could work alongside local developers, hiring locally, and also at the same time providing investment opportunities for the community. And how if you really take an ecosystem view like that, then it sort of magnifies the impact of any single project or any single fund.
Right. Yeah. So to Todd's point, yeah, because as he mentioned previously, right, the idea is that you're not really going to rely on community investment for any of the construction or development portion of it, but it's more for the takeout. So in a sense like that, the CDFI could be one of the early investors that is going to cover the cost of the development and construction portion alongside maybe some other philanthropic investors, with the understanding that they're going to be bought out at the end, right? And I think that's kind of what Mercy Corps Northwest did with the CIT. Is Mercy Corps Northwest is a CDFI. They were able to get some capital along with another philanthropic funder to essentially come up with the 20% that was needed for the project, right? A lot of times for some sort of commercial project, if you could come with the 20%, a traditional lender can then provide the other 80% to cover acquisition and rehab. And so that's kind of what Mercy Corps did, with the understanding, again, that a CIT or community investment trust of community residents will buy out the CDFI and the philanthropic funder that provided that 20% capital. And so, and then when it came to the bank, again, like I said, with the letter of credit, because the bank already has a mortgage interest or an secured interest in the property, and this is more specific to the community investment trust model, providing the letter of credit wasn't too much of a risky factor, because they already had a secured interest in the property that they were providing the lending on to do the acquisition and rehab for the development piece. So that's the idea. When it comes to more of a small business standpoint, and that's kind of where we're still trying to figure out how it would work. I think when you're talking about real estate, it's a little bit, there's a lot more maybe avenues to figure out, because there's a secured interest in the real estate asset itself. But when it comes to small businesses, that one, it was a little bit more tricky to figure out. Again, I think Boston Ujima has been figuring out some creative models for other philanthropic entities or financial institutions to be able to invest. Again, the understanding that they might get a, they might have a higher interest rate in their notes that's provided to them if they're keeping their money in for a longer period of time. And with the understanding, though, that, again, it's the community residents that are making the decisions. But to Todd's point, when it comes to, yeah, so I'm sorry, I might have gone past the question. So
that's okay. Lost the thread.
Yeah.
One of our board members, one of the Community Development Coalition board members, has said that she can see a role for CDFI as essentially being a broker that brings community dollars to a project. Right. So I think that, there will be some fertile ground for us to explore over the coming year. I'd love to see the coalition have a closer relationship, with your work. And, because obviously we've got people all across the state. What works in New York City is not going to work in Buffalo. It's not going to work in the North Country. But it would be great to have the opportunity to work with you folks and try to advance some of these issues. I have two more questions that are far less math and business involved and more about people. Do you find it hard to drive engagement, or are people just super eager to let you know what they want in a community? When you took your show on the road in Albany, you know, we often talk about how, you know, people are disengaged or they're busy and they don't go to community meetings, blah, blah, blah. Is the incentive of being able to say, we really need a grocery store enough to get people to come out and participate in these meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, when we took the show out on the road, I mean, it was a mixed response depending on the particular neighborhood that we went to. I think there were certain neighborhoods we went to where people were actually very excited. I think the concept, again, when we have the conversation with community folks about creating an opportunity for actual community ownership, can we create vehicles where that would allow people within the community to obtain an ownership stake or be able to invest in businesses, in maybe potential real estate development projects? Actually, people were excited. People were intrigued. There was actually a lot of excitement and intriguement just by the name of the forum series itself, right? When we put out there by the block, because I think that is a common theme I consistently hear in conversations with community folks, is we want to be able to create more opportunities for us to have ownership within our communities. So the theme itself definitely was engaging, did get a lot of people intrigued and interested. And then when we came up with when we presented to them the idea and topic, people were still interested. I think the thing that got people caught up was how do we execute upon this, right? So people were intrigued and they were saying, this is great, this is awesome. Yeah, I would love to be able to invest in and have an ownership stake in my community, but who's going to do this? Who's going to be who's actually going to do this? And again, I think we were trying to emphasize the community. No, as this is what we're trying to get the community to take the lead on, right? It's really the idea is for the community to take the lead on developing its own its own vehicle in order to do this work with the assistance. And again, this is where at the clinic, because we have access to our legal resources, we can help communities with developing the structures and the governance and everything that it would take in order to actually be able to operate such vehicle as a community investment cooperative. But I think again, the people's concerns about, well, who would be managing the bookkeeping and the accounting, which is all very understandable if you're talking to community members about creating their own investment vehicle, was something that was of a concern, which then led to actually the conversation with our local CDFI to say, hey, would you play a role in this? Would you want to act as a fiscal sponsor or be able to provide that back office support, which they were actually very receptive to. So, which then led to our presentation today. So no, definitely people were very much intrigued and engaged in the idea, but people have seen a lot of community meetings as well. So, a lot of times people got fatigued and said, this is just another meeting just to talk about something and nothing's going to come from it. So that was the other concern too. I think if we had something tangible, like for example, if there was a community investment cooperative that was created and existed, and we were saying, hey, this was created and existed, if you want to participate, I think there would have been a lot more participation. But because people understood the idea, it was more of just a conversation around the idea.
It's that kind of
yeah, right, exactly. People have been through that before, so
yeah.
they
Albany is the city of plans. They're all collected
right.
dust in a shelf.
Exactly.
I have one more question and then we'll wrap it up. And this is kind of a thought provoker. There's a new administration coming into the White House. We've talked about how, there's no cookie cutter solution. What works on Long Island isn't going to work in Rochester necessarily. But if there was a change or a series of changes or policies that could be implemented on the federal level, what kind of direction or what things would help move a process like this along?
So go on. I'm gonna leave that to you, Todd.
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I don't think there's been. I think a lot of it is state level, in terms of how the blue sky laws, securities laws work, or and specific issues like that. Federal level, I think it just comes down. I could be wrong, but I think it comes down to funding levels for the CDFI fund.
Good answer.
Going to plug that. And one more thing. Look, CRA, there's been a lot of controversy over recent moves to reform the CRA, but everyone recognizes it's this 1977 law. And, you know, I think it was the 95 was the last time there was substantive, you know, reforms to the system. It's ripe for revisions. It's ripe for change, but it should be done in a way that is more broad, where at least you have all the regulators doing the same thing. And working together alongside industry, alongside communities and advocates and reinvestment, you know, the CDFI industry and reinvestment specialists to come up with something that will truly work for all, you know, and while recognizing the diversity of experience and the need for local context to form its own solutions. And so, whatever that's going to look like, and I have no information. You all probably have way more information on this than I do, but whatever the Community Reinvestment Act looks like, which hopefully we see, and there's no reason not to, since it's administrative and doesn't need to go through Congress. There, you know, whatever that looks like, engagement with that and broad scale engagement with all the necessary stakeholders, that should be, you know, high on the agenda.
Great. Well, on that hopeful note, I want to thank everyone so much for coming to our CDFI Friday series today. I hope that you'll be able to join us for our final installment of the 2020 virtual conference series titled Uncovering Opportunities for Affordable Housing Together on December 4th. I really want to thank Todd and David for their work and hope to have the opportunity to work with them in 2021. And you can always find links of this recording and of previous broadcasts and a list of our sponsors on the CDFI Coalition website at www.nyscdfi.org. Thank you all again for your participation. Stay safe and be well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.